Okay, so in this video, let's talk about working with collections, customizing the gallery layout, and formatting our form to be more user-friendly. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Here, just a quick recap. We got the inventory list that's capturing all the inventory that we're allowing our employees to order from as they're a new hire. So allowing them to pick their laptop, desktop, speakers, and all this other good stuff. So since the last video, I had someone go ahead and load this list up. So now I have a lot of variation to play with as far as different products. And again, this inventory is really centered around computer accessories, mice, mouse pads, keyboards, and all this other good stuff. So, we got nice little photos in here. We have a nice variation of many different products, as you can see, like monitors and desktops. And as I'm bouncing through here, we got a few bugs that we need to work out. So you will notice that this main image does not match the thumbnail images related to this product. And if I go to another one, it seems like I'm getting the main image from the previous line item. And again, this is, when we talked about, testing, unit testing your solution, this is one of those scenarios that will pop up when you're managing list items within the list view versus linking to them as separate web parts. So we got to fix that issue. So if you look at, I got a cheat sheet here. We got three main topics that we want to cover. So we got formatting tweaks, and this is what we talked about in the previous video. We have photo tab changes that needs to happen, and then we need to wire up our notes tab. So when we say wire up our notes tab, if we remember here in looking at our wireframe, this is what our notes tab should look like. There should be a field. There's a label, there's a field to capture notes, there's a button to add the notes to the running list, and these notes will only be for this particular item, but we're going to capture certain activity that happens for this particular item. So let's start there. We got, if you look at the cheat sheet, we got formatting, we got some photo things we want to do with the photo, but let's start here because I think I've been trying to get to this since the second installment, or maybe the first installment, and it keeps getting pushed. So let's go ahead and tackle that now. So here in PowerApps Studio, the first thing you want to do is, if we kind of look at this wireframe, let's get our label in there, let's get our text box, and let's get our button just placed on the canvas. So the first thing we want to do is just go ahead and get a label. And again, this is pretty straightforward, really nothing fancy here. Let's just call this notes and give it a colon, and then we'll just add in our text box, and this should be one that allows you to enter in text, which is the big difference between text box and the label. And we can scooch this up a little bit, and it comes with a border. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with styling and stuff like that because you can kind of get lost in translation, or just kind of lost in the details of that. But with this text box, we have to be able to edit the entire box versus just that single line. So let's change the mode here to multi-line. That's going to allow us to edit that. And then finally, let's go ahead and drop our button on here. And here, this button is going to come over with rounded corners. We don't want that. So let's select the button. And then over here on the right in our property pane, let's kill the radius. I'm not too impressed with the border, so let's turn the border off. And here, let's just say add note. Okay. And really, that's going to be it. Now, how are we going to display these notes? So these notes should really kind of be like a running tally of what's happening. And it's not going to necessarily be the notes that were captured on this session, but anytime through the life of this product. So you're going to have a tally of notes. So what we want to do, we want to capture all those notes and store them in a gallery. So you're going to need a gallery control. And I'm going to just pick this first one. We're going to format it a little bit. We're not ready to specify the data source yet. So let's just, again, all I want to do now is just resize this guy, get him on the canvas. And I'm cheating here on the right because I want to make room for the scroll browser, the scroll bar that you get in the browser. So you see that scroll bar? That's just one of those considerations you have to take into account when developing custom forms. When you're dealing with Canvas apps and Power Apps, it's not too much the case. All right, so I'm going to cheat a little bit of space here on the right. As you can see, that logo could have been pushed over a little bit because that kind of gets hidden when that scroll bar. I think that's good. All right, so of course this is going to come in larger than what we expect. So the first thing we want to do is let's jump into some code. And the first thing we want to capture the note, and we want to save that to a collection. Now let's kind of back up a little bit, and I talked about this I think in the intro video. The approach here, and you got several approaches for saving comments. The approach we're taking here is that we're actually going to save all these comments inside of a collection and stored in memory right here in PowerApps. And then when the user clicks the save button to actually close the custom form, we want to save that collection as JSON within one of the fields within this list. If you looked at my PowerApps series there on YouTube, another approach would be to capture this data and save it off to a separate list. And we just call it comments, and we built that list schema in a way that it can support comments on various different applications, not just the inventory application. And we put in the needed information to store it for this particular list item, in our case, for this particular product. Now, so this is a little bit different approach, and I think this is going to be a little cleaner. There's one step I'm not too thrilled about, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So that's the approach. If you're just to kind of recap, if you're kind of jumping in this video in this series, and I actually recommend for you to go all the way to the first video, just kind of get a better understanding of what we're doing. Okay, so let's get back to the action at hand. Now, so if I go to this add button, what we want to do on select, let's just go ahead and create our collection in memory. So this is just going to be simply collect. Give it any name that you want. I'm making all these names up, and then we have to save it as a record. Now this double curly bracket is the notation to create a record. Really just is kind of like an item in a JSON array, the same notation. And here we can define what we want, because we control this entire schema. We just have to remember their names and things like that. But PowerApps is actually pretty cool. So if I do title, and again, I just want to name a column or an item, a column or property within this object title. Let's just start off with some simple data. So title is going to be, let's just put my name, Deshaun Clark, right? And then to add more of these, they're just comma separated. So then the next one would be the note, and then here I'm gonna just say sample note. And here's the date, or the timestamp. No, timestamp is probably a better word for that. So timestamp, and this is going to be, oops, be careful with your notation. So the property name does not have quotes, and it probably should not have spaces. I'm sure there's a way around it to do spaces, maybe like single quotes or something like that. But for us, let's keep it simple and let's keep it clean. So let's not use spaces or any special character in our property names. So it's timestamp, and what I'm doing, I'm putting all this sample data in here so they help me with the styling. 2000, let's say 2019, and time is, let's say 4:33 p.m. All right, and what else do we need? So let me go back to my wireframe. So I need the date, and here I'm actually putting the time in, even though they didn't ask for it. I have a generic label. I have the current user, and then I actually have the note. So I have a generic label, but we're not going to store that into the data itself. Okay, I think this is sufficient for what we need. So now what I'm going to do is go to this gallery control and set it equal to that collection I just made up. Right? So that's going to be collect notes. And now once I've done that, I actually need to come in here and clean up this gallery. Right, so one thing to keep in mind with the gallery, it took me a little bit to kind of understand how this worked, because at first I thought I was limited to these formats here, but here you can actually add whatever you want, and you can add whatever control, how many labels you need, how many text boxes you need, or whatever the case may be. I haven't been that successful with getting this to be a read-write. Let me think about that. I have, But there were certain scenarios with rewrite that I ran into issues with. But as far as displaying information, it's perfect. And it seems like that's a more natural fit. So we don't need this image control. And I have these other controls here, but I can't see them. So what I'm going to do is turn the border on. Let me do a border 1 for the title and the border 1 for this guy. And here I got an error because this guy came over, this gallery came in defaulted with dependencies on properties of other controls that were in that gallery set. So what I want to do, I have to hard code some things to make this work. All right, so here actually that should be 0, and the width, let's just make the width 200. Okay, and I think that got rid of all my errors. I don't need this arrow because we're not allowing the user to go to like a detail screen or anything like that. And then my separator, let's just hold that for now. So here, as I'm moving this guy, it seems like these were connected. Maybe I have them both selected at the same time. So here, I want to name these, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, let's just rename this to date. And let's just do, this is actually a label, so just do label date. And then this guy here, let's just rename this to label title. So LB is my prefix for label, and then title. Alright, so now that this is my title, I'm going to position these in a way to allow me to go ahead and drop data in. And again, these are just my placeholders. And you see that dotted line here, this dotted border. That's my template representing each record or each row in this gallery. So what I'm doing is I'm styling the first row, and as I drop in my collection, and for every record, it's going to be represented in one of these rows. So and then another thing, keep in mind, you can only style the first row because everything else is like a repeatable or a repetition, right? All right, so here's my date. Here's my title. Let's just make that long. And I need one for my notes. So in order to do this, I'm going to select my template. And this is where things get a little bit hairy. So this selection here, looking at the tree view, if I select the gallery, you see how long this is. And we're accounting for the scroll bar. And then if I select an item inside the template and select off, this bounding box here is the width of my template. So if I make this smaller, it will represent other data within the template. Okay, and don't worry, we're going to actually add more sample data so we can actually fill this out and really kind of get more headlights as we're kind of styling this thing. So I need real estate to hold my notes, and I have the template selected because I want to add in one more label. So if I select the label here, and then just stretch this all the way across, and actually I can fill up this entire template area, stretch this all the way across. I think that's good enough. And again, let me put a border around here so I can see where this thing begins and where it ends. And what else do we need to place here? And I think we just need this horizontal rule. So you see how we got two separators. We got a nice light separator to separate the header from the body, and then a thick separator to separate this row from the other rows, right? So let's go ahead and put another separator in here. Seems like they've already done the hard work with this, so let me just copy it, and then I'm doing Control V to paste. Did that work? Yep. And where is it? Oh, it's just sitting on top of the other one. All right, so now so I select this guiding box, and then what I'm doing is using my arrow key on my keyboard to kind of move it, and that just kind of keeps things in sync for me. All right, so this is my separator for the top, and what they're doing with the separator, they're using the fill, right, and they're using the height to determine the thickness of it, which is a cool trick. I actually use that for data cards to break up forms as well. All right. So this looks kind of hokey because I got all these borders on, but I kind of need them until I get everything styled, and I can safely turn those off. And another thing to keep in mind with these labels with the width, you want to account for the largest amount of text that you are anticipating with that this label or these placeholders are going to take, or else it just truncates it off. So it takes some playing around with, and right now we're kind of designing blindly because we don't really have any data to really kind of give us our boundaries yet. But we're going to fix that here in a little bit. All right, so now I got collect notes here tied to the items property on my gallery. And now when I hit edit, I want to map which property goes to which label. Oh, I didn't rename this. Let me rename this. And this is why I name these controls inside of my template gallery, my template area within the gallery, right? Because when you're looking at it in this view, where you need to map different properties to their respective labels, it makes sense to have something that's developer friendly. So here for LBL date, it's going to be timestamp. For LBL notes, that's going to be the note. And for the title, that's going to be title. All right, so pretty straightforward. And again, we made all those names up. We made up the names to make them developer friendly names for our controls, and we made up our names to make them developer friendly names for our properties within our collection. All right, so now I have that. This is not showing me anything, and I think this is fine for now. So let me do this. Let me hit this play button, and I need to get rid of that sample text and then hit the add button. And as you can see here, just like that, we're close to done. Just like that. So what I want to do, I got a few things I want to clean up. Why is this label in the middle? So vertical align, let's just put this to the top. And I actually want to play around with some sizes and some font sizes and things like that. Like really the easy stuff that can really be time consuming if you don't have the right discipline, because you can sit here and spend a lot of time tweaking, and you know, you look at it cross-eyed and you still tweaking, and you tweak till you're blue in the face, and when you're doing all the tweaking, every time you look at it you want to touch it. So you know, it takes a lot of discipline to understand when enough is enough and when we're good enough. All right, so here I'm just shortening things. Seems like I don't need all this height for my label for this type of text now that my font size is smaller. So what I want to do, let me go here to the right, and I want to start using these to the height here. Use this property pane to really get pixel perfect with this. So here I'm gonna just drop this down to 20, and for this guy here, drop it down to 20. I'm not expecting the guys to wrap, right? And then for my separator, I want to scoot this up a little bit. And again, I can just select the bounding box, use my key on the keyboard, my arrow up key, and then I think this is fine. Now, let me just, I really like using different shades of gray, especially when I need to, you know, for formatting and text and all this other good stuff. I really kind of prefer to use that. Okay, so let's look at, there's some logic here. There's some hidden logic here. So note added, we want to append that, but we only want to append that when they actually click this button. Submit it. This is a sample of the flow actually writing to the notes, right? So again, we want to capture all the activity that's happening with this particular item. And for this case, it's probably overkill, but it's a great example because there's a lot of use cases where you kind of need like an audit trail of what's happening with this approval request or whatever the case may be. So the understanding is that the flow process, when the item is created, it will capture this. Here, these are user notes. So really what this label is doing is trying to separate the user note from the system note or notated note. So here, we actually do need to put note added when the button is clicked, and that's the only way that note added would get added into our audit log. So here for title, let's just put note added and then colon, right? And actually this should be the real name. So these are all hard coded. So let's make these really dynamic. So for my title field, I am hard coding note added, and I need a space, right? And then dynamically I want to add in the current user's full name, and that's how you get that, right? And so the hard coded Deshaun. And now for the note, I want to just take whatever I have in this. Man, I didn't do a good job naming these global ones. Hold on. So this text input here, that should be note, text, note, right? And this label here is, rename this to note label. All right, so now I have name. Anytime that I try, and we talked about this before, anytime I want to use a controller in the formula, it makes all the sense in the world to name it, because you want to have these developer friendly to where you know, because things can get complex really quickly, and having an arbitrary name or a generic name doesn't help things at all. So here the title is note added, the current user's full name, and then the note. Now that I have my control name, this is just going to be text note.txt, right? So whatever they typed in, we're going to say that to the note property, and then the timestamp. We want to do this. Now this is a little bit tricky. It's not intuitive. Now there are built-in times, right? So you can do today, and then it's a function. These come over as functions. So if you call today, that's going to give you the current time, but it's not going to be formatted. And this is really sweet. So with this latest update, I'm not sure if this was there in the previous video, but as of late, I would say in the past 3 weeks or so, I started to notice this, where you kind of get a sense of what this data is going to look like. So there's a difference between today and now, right? So today is really just the current date. At midnight, that's today, right? Based on your current locale and all this other good stuff. Now, for now, it's going to give you the time of what's happening right now. And that's the current date and time, right? So now, what I want to do, I want to format this in the short day format. So to do that, you need to use the text function, passing your date, and then you need the text function in order to do the format. And then I want to do a date format, short date with time, which is this guy here, right? And you notice there was a short date time, and there was short date time 24. So 24 is like at 1 p.m. it's 13, 14, 15 military time, right? 15 is 3 p.m. So here I wanted to show the AM, PM stuff, so that's why I'm doing short date time. So that's my timestamp, and we're done, right? So this is dynamic, and it came over pretty nicely actually. So let me hit play, run this test over here at note, and I'm getting current timestamp. Note added Deshaun Clark admin. Oh, so that's my full name. So admin in this test environment, or this mock environment, is part of my display name, but obviously it will be whatever it is, right? So for the most part, I think we're good. So I would just keep adding this, and these to keep adding over. And it looks ugly because I got all these borders in here. So let's go ahead and take these borders out. And that quickly, we actually get some sample data. So if you don't want to fine tune some things, we got some sample data to really work with. So let me select multiple controls here, because they all have borders on, and we just want to go 0, right? And that looks okay. I mean, this top piece, I mean, you can argue and say this top piece is too much. Again, I'm falling into that trap of tweak. Okay. All right, let's leave it alone. So we got some bigger fish to fry. So first thing, let's just say this all and push it up. And as you will see, as we kind of push this thing up, and we don't have to go to publish to SharePoint, because I'm adding and writing to that collection, I can get feedback in real time. I don't necessarily have to jump and see what this thing looks like in the list. First things first, so if I go back to this play button, a couple of things you will notice right away. When I hit the add note, this doesn't clear out. So this should reset. So let's go ahead and add that. So to do that, again, you can series these functions all together. Actually, right now we only have one, and that's the builder collection in memory. Let's separate this with a semicolon, and let's just say reset txt note, and that's our note field. That's the wrong one. Txt note. That's our note column. Control, right? So that should do the trick. So if I hit play, now if I add, it goes back. I don't like this text input. We don't need that, because the user has to erase it every time they want to type something new. Now once I do that, Here's another issue you will notice. Now you notice I have these new lines in here. I really don't have a way to format, but and that's usually a common ask. So let me just show you this. So the big pain here is the new line. Oh, that didn't work before, right? So if I add spaces and add, what do I get? I get spaces and everything. All right. So for 90% of us, we're done. Minus getting rid of that weird text and all this other good stuff. But as far as capturing information, saving it in a collection, and displaying it in a gallery in a custom fashion, we're done. The next step, though, and this is a common ask, the user is going to come back like, oh, I want to put notes in here, but also I want to put in hyperlinks. Gotcha. Okay. So you want to do hyperlinks, huh? Okay, fine. So in order to do hyperlinks, because this is just a standard text, it's not going to... Hold up. Will this work? Let me try something out here. Let me see. Do I have a hyperlink? Let's do this guy. Let's do this. Let's copy this and then come back. Hit play. Does this thing save hyperlinks? I don't... My guess, no. Oh, and it also stripped out the bulleted lines too, right? All right, so we're still on track. I just want to make sure there wasn't a new surprise. Actually, I didn't think the new line formatting would work. So let's do this. So they came back and say, okay, we capturing notes. This is great, but we want to make reference to something, so we need hyperlinks, right? And believe it or not, that's a common ask, especially for like ticket tracking and all this other good stuff. So in order to do that, we actually have to scrap a few of our controls. So the first control we have to scrap is our note control, because this is just plain text, right? If you look at multi-line, whatever. So let's delete that, and then here the red axis says, hey, I got things depending on that name. It doesn't exist anymore. What's happening? So here I go to the insert. You go to in controls. Nope, go to text, and then you want to do the rich text editor. You actually need both of these guys. Rich text editor is going to allow you to capture rich, like formatting, bold, italics, so you'll see here in a little bit. And then the HTML text is like your label version for displaying HTML. So it's going to format it correctly as we expected, right? So this is this guy, and he comes in ugly and big and requires a lot of real estate and can really just distort things for you quickly, right? So, man, this thing, yeah. All right, whatever. So let's just put this guy here, give it all this real estate it needs. Wait, you're hiding my button. Let's move my button down. And yeah, I'm not even accounting for the scroll bar. This thing is just big and ugly. All right, and you can't resize it, right? And here it has a default text, which you don't need. So just make that an empty string. But it does the trick. It allows you to capture and allows the user to paste in a source that has HTML markup in it and store it the way it should be stored. Okay, so we have this big guy here. Let's rename this. If I rename this txt note, I don't have to go back and update my formula. So actually I do, because the property to get the information capture is not .text, it's .html text. But to conform to my naming convention, I'm going to just do a prefix of RTE, which is rich text editor, and then note, and that's going to be that. Now if I try to take care of my red dots here. So this red dot is using the old name. Let's update this to RTE note.html text, right? And that's going to bring the HTML text over. And the reset, you have to rename this to RTE note, so that way it resets it after it captures the information. All right, we're almost there. So now that piece is done, we should be able to test it out. So if I go here and come here, make it bold, hit add note, and there you go. So now we're missing the second piece. Here it brought it in, you can actually see the explicit HTML needed for the formatting. So now what we do is go ahead and scrap this guy. Thank you for your service. You're no longer needed. Go to insert, text control, get the HTML guy. And this one too wants to bring in some default text that we have to turn off. So here, delete all that. Oh, actually, this HTML text should be this item dot note, right? And you can see that popping in. Now, how did I know that? Well, I know that just working with the gallery, anytime that you, and there's a couple ways you can do it. You can do it through the UI by selecting the gallery, right? Hit edit, and then select it here. But sometimes you have to concatenate, and here you can only select one property at a time. There's been instances where I'm designing the gallery, and for one placeholder or one label control, I need several properties concatenated together. And to do that, you just go to select that control, and then you use this dot, and you're going to get IntelliSense. So it's going to tell you everything that's available, and you can concatenate these guys. So if you do note and then an ampersand, you can do this item again dot, let's say timestamp. Right, so I want the note and the timestamp, and the timestamp would be probably towards the end, right? Oops, hold down the Alt key so you can scroll, and then there's your timestamp. And that's very handy, especially like if you can't really anticipate how long something's going to be, but you only want like a space between the next thing, because you can only anticipate so much when you're dealing with dynamic data. This concatenate trick, it will give you exactly what you're looking for, all right? So we don't need that in this case. This is actually a one-to-one, but yeah, this item does that for you. And now I want to rename this control, so let me do HTML note, and I think we're good to go. You get this ugly scroll bar, but you know, you're only dealing with so much real estate, so there's only so much you can do, right? So hit the play button, hit this guy, and that's still coming over as expected. If I want to make this bold, that's fine. If I do new line, oh, I don't want these bold, right? And select them, take them off bold, make it an unordered list, and add the note. Go down, everything as I designed it or as composed is there. But more importantly, if the user wants to come in here and add a hyperlink, this works as well. So that's my Google link, more text, add note, come here to the bottom, click on that, new browser, you're rocking and rolling. All right, so that's that. So now we got past that, we got scroll bars all over the place. So what can you do? I mean, this form is not responsive, it's not liquid, so it's not going to stretch your container to contain it. I think there's ways around that, but I don't know them, so I have to do more research around those. But this is more than enough to be dangerous. Now, there's a couple functional things that we probably want to fix. You're adding this note, and this is a run and tally, so it makes sense to put the latest and greatest first, right? And then they can scroll through and see the history of what happened to this item. So to do that, you want to go to the collection that's set for the gallery, and you want to use your sort. So there's a sort function. It looks at a data source or a collection. Whether you want to sort by, in our case, it's going to be timestamp. Oops, timestamp. All right, and then I want to put this in descending order. Now this actually may blow up, and I think I'm realizing something now. This timestamp is actually string and not date. And this sort thing is going to sort by anything. So as long as, because you're specifying a property, the data type in that property is going to be the same. So if it's integer, it knows how to sort that. If it's date, it knows how to sort that. If it's string, it's going to do alpha, right? So in our case, this may or may not work. I think you're going to run into issues since this is not a real string date data type. But let's play around with it. All right, so we got that sorted. We put our sort in there. 233. So far it looks like it's working. So if I added a new guy, hit add, scroll bars, 235, we're at the top, 235 again, and that's the thing. So if you're doing everything within the minute, all bets are off. You can't really, because we're not doing sub-second or seconds. If I did seconds, then I think it'll be right, but I don't want to display seconds. So Yeah. All right. So that's that. So I think we're fine there. But here's this is how you get around that issue that is sorting by a string. And right now we're lucky, but I can think of scenarios like actually I can't think of any scenarios right off. But you get into issues like 9 and 10, right? Because the 1 is before, sometimes the 10 may be before the 9, even in descending order, or I don't know. I can't really think of a scenario. But I ran into this scenario for that very reason. I know how to, it's a common developer scenario. So here, we can have, all right, so instead of timestamp, let's just do friendly time. Friendly time. And that's going to be that, right? Nicely formatted time. There you go. They have names for these types of things. Formatted time. All right, so formatted time. And then let's just do timestamp. And this is going to be the raw now, right? With seconds and everything that comes with it, or this. Oh, it does. Oh, it does come with seconds, hours, minutes, seconds, right? And then the PM, AM. All right. So now you want to sort by this, but you want to display this. You see what I'm saying? So we got the string version of the timestamp for format for display purposes, and we have the raw version or the date value version of the timestamp for sorting pieces. And we can do whatever we want because we're good like that. So if something's missing, just add it. Now I lost my train of thought. Being silly. All right, so label date, we need to update this guy. So let me do the update to the UI. So label date, we want to do friendly formatted time. Everything else is fine. And then for our gallery, we want to tell this to sort by timestamp, which it's already doing. And I think we're good. I think we lost our, somewhere along the way, we lost our everything. I've seen this. Sometimes when you change things on the fly, you probably have to save it and then bounce back into it. We haven't saved in a while anyway, so it's probably a good idea to save any around this time. Let's just go ahead and push this up to SharePoint and see what it looks like. All right, let me do a Control F5. Go back into this guy. Edit mode, Control F5 again. Okay. All right. So now we got notes, and we step here, hit add, and there's our note. Hit add again. There's our note. Hit add again. There's our note. Let's wait a minute. Hit add again, and we expect it to be at the top. Now keep in mind, we're not saving anything, right? We just got a format, we got input, we got a display, we have a trigger to save the display, but we're actually not saving this information with this particular product. And I'm gonna show you how to save it, but then we're gonna have to come back and, well, it hasn't been a minute yet. Okay. We're gonna have to come back and talk about how do you retrieve it, how you retrieve the JSON, and then pop it in. All right, we'll come back to this. So let's go back to our studio and let's talk about saving this guy. So to save this guy, what you want to do is first you want to make sure that you have a container or a site column to save it in. And to do that, let's go back to our list. All right, let me just make sure this is saving at the top. All right, we're good there. Let's go back to our list, kill this. Let's go to the schema, list settings. Oh, I actually probably have this already. Just plan. So what I have is comments JSON, and this is going to be the site column that's going to store the raw JSON generated from that collection that we have in memory. And this is going to be a multi-line text type. Let's go in here and see the details so you can see the details. And you want to select plain text. You don't need anything fancy, rich, or actually you prefer not to have it because you don't want it to try to do some HTML encoding, decoding, or anything like that, trying to be smart. You want this, the way I store this is the way I want it back, plain text. All right. So now let's go into Studio. Excuse me. Let's go into Studio. Remember how we got multiple forms here. We got multiple forms here, and the SharePoint Form 1 is our main form. This is the only form that saves data back to the SharePoint list. So we need a representation of that column to save our JSON. So we select this form, hit edit, hit add field, and I'm sorry if that didn't make sense to you. Take a look at the previous video. We explained that. We set up this whole structure from scratch. All right, so here we go. There's my comment JSON. I don't have to search on it. Hit add. I don't want it to display, right? So let me do select control, come over here to the right. They're probably playing hide it. And now what I want to do is save my JSON from that collection. Now, the tendency is to go here to our update, and we talked about the power of the update property and some fancy things that you can do with it. I have to unlock it so I can use it. And what I want to do is this. I want to do JSON collect notes, right? Save my JSON. What this JSON property would do is, JSON method, ignore binary. With this JSON method, and just Google search PowerApps JSON method. What it would do is take your collection, stringify it into raw JSON file or document or text version of that collection, and then make it into a string, right? And we do this all the time in development, right? So you may have an array, you want to save as JSON to do something with it, and then the next step is to take that JSON and hydrate it into your collection or array or whatever the case may be. We do that all the time. So here they have that, they have baked it here in PowerApps, but here this is allow you to do that. But it has a restriction, and if you see this red squiggly, what it's saying is that this is a behavior. The behavior function is in the non-behavior property, meaning that the user doesn't have to do anything for this update event to get set or clicked, and that's a problem. It doesn't like that. So to do that, let's X out of there. Let's leave our update event blank for now, and we'll come back to it. We're going to come back to our gallery, and we're going to do the magic here in our add. We're going to do this may pose a problem later, but for now it's going to be fantastic. So what we want to do is our add button. This is because the user actually clicks it. It's a behavior event, and we want to save off what we were trying to do here. And again, this is going to take that collection and save it as a string, but we're not doing anything with the string. So the click event is going to happen here. It's going to do this conversion, but I need to set it to a variable. So let me call it JSON notes, and that's the variable that it's going to store that into. And now I can go to my main form, to my data card, my update property, and just set that variable here, var JSON, or did you just call it JSON notes? There it is, JSON notes, right? So that's what's happening. So a click event is going to take the latest version or copy of that collection, store it into my site column, and then so that way I have the latest and greatest in that site column. And another video, and actually I have to research on how to do this, and I read many articles on how to do it, but if you need this now, just do a Google search on PowerApps flow. You have to, it's really weird. You have to hydrate the collection through flow, and really tell flow to dig into the site column for this particular item, take that JSON and pass it to PowerApps. And when it passes it to PowerApps, it's going to be in a collection that you can then interact with, like we're doing now. And basically what we would do in that collection, at either on the on view or whatever, some other event, we'll bind that collection that we got from PowerApps into a ClearCollect, into a local collect, COL notes local collection within PowerApps, so we can interact with it. And that's really ideal, because with that collection you can add items, you can remove items. I haven't seen where you can update items. I guess that's probably a remove and re-add in that scenario. But yeah, but it's very handy. But you know, you can do a lot. Very powerful, because you got full control over the properties and all this other good stuff, and you don't have to have that back-end infrastructure to store that type of data. All right, so we're already 45 minutes into it. Let's get to formatting. So for right now, we're done, right? We can save this off. Let's push this up. I just want to confirm that this is working and show you the site column and what it looks like when you actually store the JSON, right? So now we can go to, oh no, this is still messy. This is really messy actually. So if I click on this guy, you will notice that my button, my gallery, no, I don't see the gallery, but my text control and my button, all this stuff is layering on top of that right tab. So the first thing we have to do, let's go ahead and hide this stuff, because this stuff should only display when the tab is notes, in the notes tab. So I got a button here, I got a label here. I think is that everything? The gallery, everything in the gallery is going to be upon, or the gallery control. Yeah, so let's group these guys and set the visibility property on the group to var tab notes, or var notes. All right. And now if I hit the Alt key, they're not there. And if I hit the Note tab, it pops up. All right. I think that's good. Let's save that all. Push that up. All right. So that should handle the UI issue that we ran into. I just want to confirm that this JSON is actually working as expected and being saved as expected. Like I said, I don't think that's a fully baked solution, especially with the flow interacting with it. Because my other thought is, how are we going to get the latest from the flow? I don't know. I'm gonna have to. It may actually work itself out. I'm probably overthinking it. All right, so let me hit Control F5. Click on this guy, and hopefully I don't need more refreshes. I didn't go into edit mode, so I probably need one more refresh. All right, so this looks good. Looks good. Looks good. Working as expected. Now check this out. This guy is allowing me to add stuff, and I'm in read-only mode. Not good. And that's just because the controls have no respect of the different form modes by default. That's more of a data card driven, that's a form control data card driven functionality or event that you get for free, that you're all wired up and you never had to consider before. So I have a display mode on the group. Fantastic. So right now this is hard coded to edit. Let's just change this to our SharePoint form and then get the display mode off of that. And that's going to drive, that should fix our problem. And that I can't test in PowerApps Studio because I need the different events or the different modes of the actual list form. So I have to test that out in SharePoint. So let me do a Control F5. All right. So a new mode looks good. Cancel. And read-only mode is the one that we saw the issue with. Nah. Let me do a Control F5. Maybe I just need a refresh. Go over here. There you go. Nice and locked down. Then if I go to edit mode, notes. Good. Perfect. With the bold. Perfect. All right. So now, I captured some notes and I hit save. Which item am I on? Oh, Ace's Beast mode. So if I select this guy, scroll all the way to the right, you will notice my JSON and it's coming over. And that's the JSON string format. Now, obviously I can't look into it because if I click on it, it's going to pop open my custom Power App, and my custom Power App is not doing anything with comment.json. But here is you get a small little snippet that this is working as expected. All right, fantastic. So now next step is let's jump into our formatting tweaks. And thank you so much to Ken Warden. Thanks, Ken, for all your tips and tricks on formatting. So Ken set us up with the default date tips and trick, as well as the currency format. So let's go ahead and drop those in. So if you go to inventory, and I think, Ken, I got it. Let me hold down the Alt key, hit the price field. Now here's the thing, you got to hit the price text field, right? And you go to advanced, and I'm already there, and you want to make sure this guy is unlocked. And what you're going to do, you're going to set it's the default property. So you set the default property, and basically what you want to do is store this as text, right? So here you do text and convert it to value. I'm doing this by memory, Ken, sorry. So convert this to a value. So really you're going to take that text string, convert it to a value, and then from here you can format your number. And the formatting, and these are formatting. If you do PowerApps formats, you will find things like this. So formatting is $, $. These are really placeholders, right? And that's going to give you just $1. Now if you want to do the cents, you do a decimal spot and then the double zero, and that will give you the cents. Now you can do a decimal and then the dollar, the pound. I call them $, pound. So $1, pound, comma, pound, pound, pound. I think these are regular expression formatters. But to get the cents, you have to do 0 because you need the 0 padding, right? And if there's no cents, you still want a .00 so that you're consistent, right? So really, that's it. And it's, man, I mean, this worked out fantastic. Now, why does this work? And I think this is one of the things that you asking yourself why, or understand why you're working versus just copy and pasting snippets is critical, because you're going to run into a scenario where you need a different format, right? Or you don't want the $, or you want you would notice this like on order, right? We just want numbers with a common separator if it's to represent the thousands, right? Now, even though I have a placeholder here of the pound, comma, and then the other pounds to represent the different digits, if this was in the millions, it would still drop my commas in the right area as you expect it to be, right? And then, of course, you got the language formatter here and all this other good stuff. So what we want to do, go back to what Ken provided, is that format there, and that's going to give us the $, that's needed. And you can actually copy and paste this because it's dynamic in the sense that it's agnostic to the different site columns and site column names, because of parent.default, all that's just going to propagate down. So here from our retail, going to the same one, as long as I'm on lock, going to the default and then paste that in. Now the one concern I had, I was like, wow, well, how is this? And this is all Ken provided, and he was like, it works, it's fine. And I was like, well, how is this not doing $, on top of the $, right? You know, how is this not taking this value and reapplying the same formatting to where you get $3 and multiple decimal spots and all this other good stuff? Well, our saving grace is on this data card. Let me go back to the data card itself. If you look at the update property on this data card, you would notice that it's doing the value. So though we're adding a nice formatting to make this user friendly, this value function strips all that away and still store it in the site column as a digit, and that's exactly what you need, right? So this works out perfect. So, you know, give that a try. So that's one. The other one is the date field, and this is actually a pet peeve of mine. So instead of having this 12/31/2001, and actually this comes from default. So if you look at I never dug into this advanced tab here for a field, and I want to say that these everything you see here is going to be in this drop down. But the way that it's formatted here, it makes it more sense because they're grouping it and all this other good stuff. So it makes a little bit more sense. So here, if you needed to change your format to where you wanted to show the time, right? And we saw that when we were playing with it. You can change the format to show date and time, right? Or you can do short date, or you can do long date. You can play around with whatever you need, right? So if you want to show the time, you can do that. But I don't want to do that. I want to go back to what it was set to, short date. All right. And then if you need to change your locale and all this other good stuff, but I think this locale picks up from somewhere else. So I can't. there may be scenarios where you want to explicitly change this, but I think this will automatically just work. But it'd be interesting to see if this locale changes, if the user changes their locale, like on the browser and all this other stuff, that really kind of drive some of these settings. So .local, I think, is going to give you probably the best dynamic setting. And then parent.default, this is just the value that this control is set to when it comes over from the site column. So what you want to do here, default value, you want to set that to today. Right, so if you do this to today, that should be the fix for it. But I think you want to set this to today if the parent default value is empty, right? So I think you want to put a little bit smart on this, and I haven't tested this out. This is just me kind of, maybe overthinking this. But if I do parent.default, which is the value from the site column, is blank parent.default, and there's two, right? There's is blank and is empty. Is empty test is the check for collections. Is blank is to check for controls or records or single item things, right? So if this is blank, then we want to default to today, else default to whatever the parent default is, right? And I think this is going to cover a scenario that we're editing something and the date is already there. We don't want to blindly just overwrite all those values and make it to today, right? So if they specify something, it's the specified amount, but if it's blank, default it to today. And I think that's it. Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it. Thanks for all your help. Now here, if you go to on hand and on order, we want to throw commas in here, right? So for here, it's the same deal. The same deal that we use for currency. So we just come up here and text, let's do, you do text, and then you want to do the value version of this. And that's going to give you the commas. And like I said, I mean, if it's, here it seems like it's going to stop at 10,000 or whatever, like 9,9999. But this is, I think it's regex. I have to look it up. But I think it's regular expression formatting to where it's just going to handle all cases, right? And again, we're not double applying that formatting, because if you look at the on order, again, on the update property, it converts that text value into integer value and then save it off. And the only reason why we got this automatically is because this site column is set to number, right? Versus single line. So it's versus single line text. Right? So this is set to number, and when we did that, the data card representing that site column put in these triggers and these different functions to ensure that we only get numbers back from the user versus a mix of text or strings. All right, so that's that. Obviously, you can move these. I think this a little bit crammed. I think that was the note that I had, that this was crammed. So what you can do, you can go to this property here. 444 forces this on this online. Again, do that for the data card. I think all of these should be on their own line, actually. And I think these are okay to be side by side. They don't take up a lot of real estate, and you can read them. All right, so I think that's that. And hold on the details tab. For this guy, we wanted this to, one, give it more real estate, and two, allow it to handle rich text, right? So in order to handle rich text, what I've done for the description field, let me just bounce back over here, go to my list settings. I'm sorry, I wanted to change all these settings with you on the video, but I think prepping for this, a lot of these were changed, and I forgot to change them back. So I took that existing description field and then converted it over to enhance rich text. And I think I can get away with that one. But let's just leave it. I haven't tested what rich text is, bullet size. So switch that to enhance rich text. And what that's going to do, that's going to allow you to store the HTML tagging, whatever. But in order to deal with it or to display it correctly, you're going to have to actually change this, change the site column for this. And again, this is going to be on my, where's descriptions? Description. That's on my main. That's on my main form, SharePoint form 1. And then you find this description guide, and it says edit multi-line. You actually want to change this to edit rich text. And when you do that, it brings in that nasty control that we've already played around with. But it's going to do what you need it to do. It's going to allow you to use your bold tags and your strong tags, your UL and LI tags, and it's just going to work, but it takes up a tremendous amount of real estate. And I'm hoping that in the future, they will allow you to control how much of this you display. Like for, I think in our intents and purposes, I actually just wanted to display the HTML tags and force them to copy and paste. Because really what this is, this allows them to copy and paste, and you maintain the formatting from the copy and paste with some stripping. All right, let's just save this off. I think this is it for this video. Wow, this ended up being 60 minutes plus, but well worth it. I think the information with collections and storing that and storing the backend JSON, I think is well worth it. But let me know what you think. It could be a little verbose. Maybe we should do these in smaller bite-sized chunks. But I think the context is everything, and I think that's what's missing with a lot of this stuff. With the training that's out there now, it's the context of why you will use certain things and when you will use certain things, and some of the effects of using certain things, and blah blah blah. All right, so this is that, and now let's just kind of test this out. So if I put in 23, and I'm not taking off the comments, I'm not taking off the $, I'm gonna save it. And now if I go back into it, it saved as 12. Wait, no, I was in the wrong one. It saved as 23. I can see it here in the list itself, right? And that's really fancy, and that's just a combination of, before you store it, using the value function to strip all this formatting out to the raw digits. And then from a user perspective, they can come in here and they can manipulate and do what they need to do. This field is set up to only take numbers only. So if they try to type in letters or whatever, that's fine. Here, I'm not going to move the decimal spot. As a user, I'm not going to move this around. I'm just putting in the number that I want. Whoa, what? Yeah, I'm going to just put in the number I want and then save it. And then if I go back into this guy, you will see the value. Oh, let me point something else out. Oh, huh? If I go back into, oh wait, I don't have my refreshes down. Hold on. Let me get all my refreshes in. It tricked me. It showed me partial without all my refreshes. All right, there we go. I should get the latest and greatest now. So now if I go in here, modify this. Again, I'm not going to take all the comments out. Let me just do something a little bit more. There you go. I'm not going to take the comments out. It's going to do that for me. It's going to give me the right number. Now, here's the thing. What you're seeing here is one with the $, one without the $, and this is stored. I think this is stored in this raw format. Now, let's talk about this. Why do you have that mismatch? Let's look at the difference between those two site columns and list settings. Now, if you look at price, that's set to currency. If you look at retail price, that's set to number. From a storage standpoint, they're going to do the exact same thing. They both strip out the formatting and store it as the actual digit. But the one that's set up as currency, when you're looking at it from a list perspective, from the list perspective, not the PowerApps, the list perspective, this view, it's going to pepper in the $, and the decimal point and do what it needs to do. Okay, that's the biggest difference. So on hand, these should be numbers, right? Because they're not currency, so I don't need the $, or anything like that. But for consistency's sake, I should convert this over retail price to the currency. And thank goodness I'm still falling within these allowable column type changes for the site column. And you know that there are certain site columns that like people group. Once you create that as people group, there's no flip-flopping between it. You find yourself deleting it, recreating it, and you know, and that has propagated changes because now you have to go into the Power App and make the change and yada yada yada. So thank goodness we're still within reason for, you know, for that column type to bounce between single line text, currency, number, and whatever else they had in there. All right, so now if I go back here, now all, you know, both of my columns, these two guys are doing the $ and the decimal spot, and then for on hand, this is still doing what it does. You can see the low numbers and stuff like that, but for high numbers, it's going to put the comment in for the 1000 spot. All right, that's it for this video. In the next video, what do we want to capture? Okay, let's go ahead and get our notes out. In the next video, we need to, for our notes tab, how to retrieve, I can't spell for nothing, so forgive me. I usually do this in Notepad. I mean, OneNote, where I have spell check. So retrieve JSON string, convert to collection, right? And this is going to allow us to manipulate that. What else we need to do? I think after that we really need to get going. We're so behind. I'm gonna say we, because you're in this with me, right? We're so behind on the series that we really need to get going. Like the request piece, is some really interesting things that need to happen in the request piece, because from the request perspective, it's going to use this inventory list, but the request perspective is going to look at those items as a catalog of items to pick from, and then you select it and it builds this cart, and then that cart becomes your request to your manager. Say, hey, I want to do XYZ. From that request, when it's submitted, it needs to be routed to a manager, and we can talk to many different, there's so many different scenarios that come into mind. These are common scenarios, but there's many different scenarios. Like, do you want the manager that's defined in AD, or do you want the user to select the manager that should go to, or should you start with the manager in AD and then allow the user to overwrite? There's so many different scenarios there. And then from there, we want to actually send an email to the manager, nice formatted email, which is common, of the request, allow them to approve, decline. The approval and flow is interesting, especially when you start looking at PC versus Mac and Android versus Apple phone. Interesting scenarios there, so we'll walk through those. So that's going to roll in our flow piece, and then once we get past the flow piece, then we get into some Power BI stuff, and that's when I need to call in my good friend Eduardo to help me out, because Power BI, I'm extremely green. All right, so that's it for this video. As far as the notes, I think the next big one is kick off the request form, right? And I think this is the first thing we're gonna do is start building the catalog with inventory and allow them to filter by category and all that other stuff. We'll do something cool. We'll try mimic. I'm gonna do a wireframe for that. I think we just start mimicking what we see on the Amazon app on your phone, right? Because we're still in that app vertical view, so, or maybe a little bit wider since it's in the, well, no, we'll figure it out. Anyway, see you in the next video. Any questions, comments, leave a comment. You like this long form? Should we switch to bite-sized chunks? Let me know what's best for you, because I know we're all busy, and to sit through a 60-minute, 70-minute video could be taxing, but I don't know. Let me know. Context is everything, I think. All right. Talk to you soon.